felt very called out a few times, not gonna lie. Hello everybody, welcome back. This is another pre-filmed video for Vlogmas. This year I set myself a goal to try and start reading more. And my goal was to read 12 books this year. Because I'm a pretty slow reader. At least I thought I was. And I was thinking, okay, 12 books, 1 book a month, that seems doable to me. Here we are 24 books later. So about 2 books a month. Average it out. Yeah. I wanted to kind of sit down and talk about the books I read this year and my thoughts and opinions on them. I was gonna actually have the books here to be like, this is the book, and like show the cover and everything, but I think I'm just gonna put them up on the screen, and of course every book I talk about in this video will be linked down below. Also, I don't have any affiliate links, so they're not affiliate links, they're just normal links, just for transparency. So like I said earlier, I read 24 books this year, and I've been keeping track of it on my Notion. This is a new development for me. I've really been loving my Notion. I totally see why people use it. It is so customizable, it's so fun, and it's just very easy to help yourself keep track of a lot of things at once. So the way that I'm going to do this video is I ranked these books on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 meaning I don't really like it, don't really want to read it again, honestly just kind of want to get rid of it, to 5 out of 5, will read again, love it to death. So those are the scale my books are ranked on, so we'll start with the 1 and end with the 5s. So I actually only had 1 out of 5 books this year, and it was a book called Fairplay. I'm not even sure where we got this book, it just has kind of been one of those books that we've just had. And one of my other goals was to just try and read all the books that we had, because I think I have fallen into the trap of just buying books that I like but never actually reading them. So between my goal of reading 12 books this year and trying to get through my physical TBR, both goals were achieved. This was a pretty short book. I think it was only like 100 pages or something. And it wasn't that it was like written really bad, it just wasn't for me. It was a book about, you can see how much I liked it, I don't even remember, about a family that lived on a farm going to meet some of their family closer to the city to go to a fair. And this little boy kind of like gets upset with his siblings about always getting in trouble and like runs off. And like I said, it was fine, but it's just not something I enjoy. So for me, 1 out of 5. So I actually did not have any 2 out of 5 rankings for this year, so we're going to move right ahead to the 3 out of 5s. Now, a series that I love is the Land of Stories series by Colfer. I absolutely love it, I adore it, but and I have all of the books, but I had just never read past the 2nd book. I don't know why, but I was able to finish the series this year, which I'm very happy about. Unfortunately, the 3rd book in the series was pretty mid in comparison to all 6 books. In my opinion, it was kind of eh. A lot of the other stories, which I'll talk about later, are very well built out and are a story within themselves, it feels like. But this book very much felt like needing like a I don't know how to explain that. Like the first 2 books were 2 separate with 2 individual stories. I think that's a better way of putting it. Like, you could read that book from start to finish and understand the story entirely. The 3rd book was a very strange transition where it was It had a lot more loose ends. It had a lot more plot you needed to make sure you understood, because as you read the later books, like you would remember things from the third book that happened and that you were confused about when you read the third book, but now makes sense in like the fifth book. So in my opinion, it was like a 3 out of 5. I definitely think it was important for the overall narrative of the series, but definitely not the best to just sit and read. Speaking of the fifth book, I also ranked the fifth book in this series as a 3 out of 5. And I think it's because it fell into similar pitfalls as the third story. It is the book that ties the final climactic events of the last book and the really fun new elements introduced in the fourth book. It's the bridge between the two. And because of that, it was very clear that, again, you were going to learn things in this book that are only going to make sense in the next and final installment, but for now they're just not really going to make a whole lot of sense. So again, 3 out of 5 for me. So I think the 4 out of 5 is definitely going to be the longest section of this video, because I had a lot of books that were 4 out of 5. And to me, a 5 out of 5 book is a book that's like, I'm gonna read this again, I really loved it, want to know more about the story. But a 4 out of 5 is, it's really good, I really enjoyed it, but I don't see myself grabbing for it for a reread. So to start this off is I Was Born for This by Alice Oseman. This book came out, or the US cover of the book I think came out last year. But I finally picked it up to read it this year, and this was at the beginning of the year when I read this, so I didn't have a routine for my reading like I do now, so it also took me a really long time to get through, just because I was more sporadic with it. But I definitely really liked this book. It was very fun. As a fangirl myself, felt very called out a few times, not gonna lie, but it was just a really fun read. Maybe fun's not the right word, because it's a very sad book, but it was just a nice book to read. I think that's a better way of putting it. As dark as it could get at some points, it was just a very nice book to read. I really enjoyed my time reading it, and honestly, it's the thing that really kickstarted my want to read more books this year. So I really appreciated it for that. So the next 2 books go hand in hand, and they are the first and second volume of the Heartstopper series from Alice Oseman again. You're gonna see a lot of Alice on this list. I read a lot of her stuff this year. No, being perfectly honest, I have nothing against the first and second installments of this the first and second volumes of this book, or this series. I love the Heartstopper series. I think they are absolutely adorable. I love the Netflix show. They are just not my favorite out of everything that's come out. Honestly, the newest stuff that's been coming out is my personal favorite. But yeah, I would much rather reach for the 3rd or 4th volume than the 1st and 2nd. So like I explained before, I really, really love it, and I think that it's absolutely adorable, but they aren't my immediate grab to rereads for this series in particular. I feel like I need to explain this one. But basically, I have the Ever After High series books, and I never actually read them. I bought them when I was still in middle school, when the show was coming out on Netflix actually, because I just really loved this universe and I wanted to know more about it, and they had books, so I was like, I'll buy the books. But I never ended up actually reading them, so again, wanting to get through my physical TBR is kind of how they ended up on the list. And I fully walked into it thinking, like, I'm not gonna like them, they're like for middle school girls, I'm a lot older than that now. Like, I don't think I'm gonna like them, but I actually really did. and it made me appreciate what a lot of people call easy reads. Like a book that you can sit and finish in a few days. Well, for me a few days, for others maybe just a single day. But it was just a very easy story to follow. I really liked it. So the first and second volume of the Ever After High series I gave a 4 out of 5. For similar reasons as Heartstopper. I really loved the books. I really enjoyed my time with them. And I do think they hold a special place in my heart, because this was when I started really figuring out my reading time schedule. For me, that's at night when I've brushed my teeth, washed my face, ready for bed. First thing I do when I crawl into bed is I sit down for an hour and I just read whatever book I'm reading, and then I journal for the night, and then I'm off to bed. I go on my phone, I'm not gonna lie. But this is when I was first starting out, figuring that out and what was working best for me, and so I think those books also hold a really special place in my heart for that reason. Next 4 out of 5 is actually a poetry book. It's Breaking Your Glass Slippers. And this was a random find for me at Barnes & Noble. I went looking for the new Nick and Charlie novella that had just come out, and I saw this book as well, and it looked really interesting, and I was like, you know what, let's grab it. And I really loved this book. It had some beautiful illustration in it, and it is, again, a very short book, but a very well made one, and I really, really enjoyed it. The only reason I put it out of 4 out of 5 is because I don't see myself rereading a poetry book very often, but like a full reread start to finish, I see myself pulling poems from it. And like I said, the guidelines I gave for myself was 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5 is solely for reread whenever I can, and this is a reread whenever I want a single poem. So to me, didn't quite meet that 5 out of 5 that I wanted, but is very, very close. It is very good. We have now circled back to the Land of Stories series, the 4th book in this series. Like I said before, it introduced a brand new element. Giving a brief overview, I don't want to spoil anything, but basically there's a new potion that allows them to go into other stories, other dimensions, whatever you want to think of it as, and you get to see this mechanic play out through the whole book. And it was very fun to watch this brand new thing come into this universe, because it was very much starting to feel like everything that could have happened happened. And now that we have this new element, it's a way of exploring this new part of the universe that hadn't been explored before. And I definitely really like it. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I would recommend the Land of Stories series to anybody. It, again, holds a very special place in my heart. The first book was a huge inspiration for me to actually start writing. So reading this, finally saying that I finished this series, just means a lot to me. Which I feel like transitions us nicely to the next 4 out of 5 book, which is the final book in the series, the 6th one, where all these elements you've been seeing in the Land of Stories world is now being brought to our world, or what the book refers to as the other world. And you get to see it all play out here with our technology and everything we have made here compared to what is in their world. It's just this big clash, and it's really fun. It's a great ending to this book series. I think Chris did a great job with it, and again, highly, highly recommend. So our penultimate 4 out of 5 book is the Wild Rescuers. It's the first one, it's the one in the Taiga, by Stacy Plays. Now, I have been a big Stacy fan since she was making videos with Joy and Hungercraft, so having her book meant a lot to me, and I'd always felt so guilty that I never read it. And again, it was just a really nice, easy read. It took me a few days to get through. It was a great story. I really liked it. Again, I don't see myself pulling for it as a reread, but definitely enjoyed my time with it. And of course, we ignited my love for her Dogcraft series. My battery's gonna die. Before we get to the last one, let's change the battery. Hold on. We are back. So the final 4 out of 5 book is another Chris Colfer book. It is Stranger Than Fanfiction. Again, this is one of those books that I picked up when it came out and have just never read. And while I was reading it, I fully believed this was going to be a 3 out of 5, but the ending turned it into a 4 out of 5 for me. It was an ending I did not expect, but a wonderful one for this series, for this book. I think it explained a lot of behaviors for one of the characters and truly came out of nowhere, which is very rare because I feel like a lot of media nowadays you can kind of figure out what the twist is going to be before it comes, just because there's so many cliches now that everybody does, so it's a little bit easier. But this truly came out of nowhere for me, and I definitely think it was wonderful. It is now time for the 5 out of 5s would read again section, and it is starting strong with another entry from Alice Oseman, the Nick and Charlie novella. And I can solidly say I think I have read this book about 7 times. It is so cute. It is wonderful, and I think it speaks to the reality what Alice tries to put into her characters, which I think is why a lot of people really love her writing, is because it feels like she's writing real people. And to be able to do that, as well as have this huge cast of LGBTQ plus characters represented throughout all of her works, is amazing. And I can't wait to see what she makes in the future. And truly, if you love the Heartstopper series, read Nick and Charlie. It really puts into perspective a lot of the fears I think a lot of us have when we are leaving high school, and it's so good. It's so good. It's a very short book. It's very nice. I can't say enough good things about it. I love it. Now, like I said in the previous section, the 3rd and 4th volumes of Alice's Heartstopper series are a 5 out of 5. I have reread them more times than I can count. I love the Paris trip. I was so excited for season 2 this year to actually see it come to life, and it came to life in a way I never expected. And I also didn't expect many scenes from the 4th book, but yet here we are. And to be able to watch these 2 volumes that I have loved for the last year come to the screen was amazing. Kit and Joe are absolutely incredible, Nick and Charlie. And yeah, I don't think I need to spend too much time on it. It is a very popular series. I think you know what happens. Next, 5 out of 5, is the final book, the 3rd book in the Ever After High series. It is so wacky, so weird. This is the one book. I've been doing my best in this video to not spoil the books I'm talking about and just give my opinions, because I hate being spoiled and I don't want to do that to anybody. So, but this is the one book I'm going to spoil, so please, this isn't something you want spoiled, don't watch this part. But in this book, it delves into the world of Wonderland and basically how chaotic and backwards it is. And during this time, the Jabberwocky is trying to take over the Ever After High land. I don't remember what it's called, but the land. And in doing so, it makes a lot of the characters mad. And the narrator, who has been in all the books, starts to also be affected and starts speaking in Riddleish, which is a Wonderlandian language where you only speak in riddles. And of course the only characters not affected by these changes are the characters from Wonderland. And so they realize that they have to work together to try and get this going and try and help. And one thing about these Wonderland characters is Madeline Hatter, the daughter of the Mad Hatter, can actually hear the narrator. So she can use him to help figure out what they should be doing. But all of a sudden, he starts talking Riddleish, and of course Maddie realizes and comes to the realization, if we don't have a narrator, we don't have a story. And so she remembers something she read saying that you can become a narrator after you take this oath. And so she asks, like, if I take this oath right now, could I become the narrator of the story to continue it? And of course, in a riddle, the narrator does say yes. So she takes this oath and becomes the narrator of the story. And so they start fighting, Maddie's trying to narrate. It's like this weird mishmash. And Maddie realizes that they're really struggling, they're not really going to do this. And she has this wacky idea where they finally open a portal to Wonderland and they're trying to get the Jabberwocky in, but it's not really working. And then Maddie realizes, hey, there are people reading this story. They're thinking of what's happening right in front of us in their head. If they think of the Jabberwocky going into Wonderland, it should happen. And so Maddie breaks the fourth wall to talk to us, the readers, to chant in our heads, like, go into Wonderland, go into Wonderland, or something like that. And it works, the Jabberwocky gets put into Wonderland, and everybody's safe. Narrator goes back to normal, and it is the best fourth wall breaking I've ever seen. And I love it. And I couldn't recommend this story more. It's so funny. Yet another Alice Oseman entry. I won't spend too long in this, seeing how this book isn't even 100 pages. But This Winter by Alice Oseman, it takes place right after Charlie comes back from his time at the hospital, and I think speaks a lot to recovery, or at least that's the parts that I picked up on a lot, is the people around you don't always understand what you're going through, but you do, and sometimes it's just a lot. And to watch Charlie try and navigate this in a healthy way after watching him navigate it in not so healthy ways in the previous volumes of Heartstopper, I love it. It's just so comforting to watch somebody, not really watch, but read about this character struggling in the ways that I struggle with my health. And I think that's just another reason I love the Heartstopper series. I relate to Charlie in so many ways. Even though his health problems are more mental and mine are more physical, there are a lot of crossovers that I've noticed that just bring me a lot of comfort and joy. I think the final Alice Oseman entry on this list is Solitaire. I reread this book this year because the new US edition came out. I did have a different version, but I wanted this US version, and although I don't think most of us are dealing with a prankster at our school, maybe you are. I haven't been in school in a while, but I think a lot of Tori's struggles in this book are just very apparent, and very common for a lot of kids that age to have gone through, and to just, again, read somebody who you can relate to is just chef's kiss. The final book in this video is, of course, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The last book I had read, I read it because the movie's coming out, and I just wanted to read the book before I watched the movie, because I really liked when the original Hunger Games were coming out. That's exactly what I did. I would read the book, and then I'd go watch the movie, and then I'd read Catching Fire, and go watch the movie, then I would read Mockingjay. So it felt appropriate to do it again, and I think this book, yeah, I don't know if I can add much more to what's online, but I really like how Snow wasn't shown in this positive light. He was shown in a very negative light, and shown that just because he's a villain doesn't mean he had to have some tragic backstory to make you sympathize with him. Like, no, he's just a bad person. And I really think that this book shows a lot of, it gives a lot of context to Snow's action in the trilogy. But yeah, those are my book reviews. This was quite a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Yeah. I did a lot of reading this year. I'm very proud of myself for reading this many books this year. I'm still reading, but yeah. Let me know what your favorite book from the list is down below. I would love to know. Please like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and I will see you in 2 days for a new Vlogmas episode.